think, quite obvious to all of you that follow the life of the church closely. Different opinions. We are not all of one mind on all issues. In fact, I believe one of the reasons that this whole matter was referred to the Council of Bishops is because some people believe, perhaps not everybody, but some people believe that the council may represent the diversity of the church in a way that no other body does. I actually think that's an affirmation of the fact that we do have different opinions, and in order to move us forward on very critical issues, it's important to have the diversity of our global church represented. I, of course, am not going to reveal to you what individuals have said or who voted how. I will tell you that there is very honest, candid conversations going on, and I think a growing awareness within the entire council that we have to come together. Even though we may have very strong opinions, very strong values, we have different cultural contexts, that we are at a point where simply holding firm to those exclusive to having a conversation about how we can become we can be a unified church with some localized regional expressions is what's carrying the day.
We have another question. David.
David Burke, Great Plains. Kind of take us through the last 24 hours. Your response to what everybody was saying about yesterday's statement and how that formed today's statement.
Well, I thought you were going to ask me something more personal, like have I slept or eaten in the last 24 hours? Yeah. The response to the initial statement that I made on behalf of the council has been for the most part positive, and I think, and I'm fully aware that that's not universally true, but I think there's generally been a positive response because our heart is to be a people that remain united for the sake of the mission. I think we believe in Jesus' prayer that the church would be united for the sake of the witness. And so I think that's why there's been for the most part, a positive response. It did not directly impact the discussions we've had subsequent. That was driven much more by the recommendation or the petition or the motion, I should say, that came off the floor, inviting the council to offer some additional leadership. I'm grateful for the motion. We're also very clear, and I think this was in my initial statement yesterday on unity, that the council knows our boundaries. The Constitution is very clear about the legislative role of the General Conference and the presiding role of the bishops. We've tried to respect that, and so it was helpful if the body wanted some additional leadership. It was helpful to hear from the body that they wanted that. And as I tried to say in my statement, I hope it came through clearly enough, is that we're quite frankly humbled. I mean, we began our deliberations yesterday afternoon in response to that, in deep prayer, in recognition that the church has given us a kind of holy moment. And just to put it in the vernacular, we didn't want to blow it.
Riley Case, Confessing Movement. There's a lot of talk about unity. There has been a lot of confusion, as you all know, in the last several years. It appears that there's going to be, if this is referred there's going to be more confusion and probably more unhappiness. Now, have the bishops talked about how to handle the dissatisfaction? Particularly, I'm talking about churches that are going to leave. Are these how are we going to handle this? How are the bishops? What's the attitude? Do churches leave with grace, or do we fight lawsuits? Do we bring lawsuits? Or have the bishops thought ahead to possible scenarios that might be brought about by any of these plans? Actually, probably could talk about that even if we did defer.
Riley, of course, we've had some conversations about not only what happens if there are churches that feel like the only way to remain faithful is to leave, and we've also had conversations about what happens with those churches who have engaged in ministries in a profound way with gay and lesbian, transgender folks who also feel like if it's hurtful, they need to leave. And we've talked about the whole spectrum of that. But I think what's germane to your question is, have we gone as far as we need to go in those conversations? The answer is no. And so what we've offered to the church is a process for how we can engage more deeply in those conversations. And we understand that if the commission is formed, that's where most of that conversation would happen. But as you saw in the statement or heard in the statement, we also anticipate that the council has to continue those conversations. What are the implications of a whole variety of scenarios? And how do we lead the church through a whole variety of scenarios? And so there's more work to be done, both by a commission and the council, and we see those need to be in conversation with each other. And we certainly understand the urgency. I mean, part of the urgency is we can't stay where we're at. Yeah.
Julia?
Julia Frisbee, Love Your Neighbor Coalition. First, I want to thank you so much for stepping up and exhibiting the leadership that we've asked for. I want to ask, how does the Council of Bishops plan to decide who's on this commission, and will LGBTQI people be represented on the commission?
We will. We have not made those decisions. We've made a broad statement about the fact that we are deeply committed to making sure that all the voices are at the table. One of the first things we would do if this is supported and we're asked to continue the process to offer leadership, then that would be one of the first tasks we would do, because we know it's timely to form that commission, and that we know the church will be very, very curious. And I can tell you that, and you all know this, I'm not going to tell you anything you don't know. You're all smart. You're very bright. If we don't get that right, we're not going to go anywhere, are we? I mean, and what I mean by right, we're going to need to have all the voices at the table, or folks will not trust or engage in anything that might emerge from that. So, I mean, we get that, and so we're deeply committed to making sure that there are voices that represent the full range of groups, some of which are identifiable and some of which are highly organized, are represented in those conversations. We're particularly concerned that that this be a global conversation, and that there be representation from across the breadth of our church. Yeah.
Laura?
Laura Allen, United Methodist Reporter. Throughout the 2 weeks, there's been a lot of talk about trust and the breakdown of trust and respect. And I wonder, I think your statement went a long way in sort of trying to reach out and trust our process and show leadership. What would you like people to know in terms of delegates, in terms of us in the press? What is the Council of Bishops feeling on the issue of trust and the observation of the process when the proposal came forward.
Being perceived or viewed as trustworthy all flows from, I think, having integrity in the statements we offer, being genuine in those statements, and then being consistent in our follow-through. I think one of the reasons that there's a lot of distrust is that we currently do have a discipline that's very clear about these matters, and that some people in the church perceive those to be very, very hurtful, and others perceive them to be actions that give us identity and definition. And I think trust starts to break down when we say this is what our position, but it doesn't always get reflected in all of our actions. And it's one of the, and we won't rebuild trust, in my opinion. We will not rebuild trust until there's some way for every individual United Methodist and every individual bishop to be able to be able to have a place to say, I am speaking with integrity and I'm acting with integrity. But we don't have that right now. And part of the face-off is to say, well, if everybody just did this, then we'd trust each other. And others would say, if everybody just did this, then we would trust everybody. And we've got to figure out how to resolve that. And I think it's at the core of what we believe God is calling the Council of Bishops and, in fact, the entire General Conference to engage in that conversation. Can we find that place? I think part of what I think is shifting, if you will, if there's a shift going on, or at least there's a growing sentiment, is that there are a couple of really key pillars to who we are as United Methodist people, and one is our connection and our connectionality. And how do we affirm that we are all connected across things that we agree upon, including our discipline, and at the same time there's a principle of locality, and that is how do we remain contextual and therefore relevant in all places. And both are important, and both need to find some affirmation, and to some degree we have done that. The central conferences have great freedom to adapt the discipline now on most matters, and so we understand the principles. They're just not uniformly engaged, and I think that's part of what we're struggling with as well.
Cynthia.
Cynthia Astle, United Methodist Insight. Bishop, this has been an extraordinary 24 hours.
That's probably because you got some sleep, I'll bet.
Even without sleep, it's been an extraordinary 24 hours. Do the bishops have whiplash yet? I mean, you've been going back and forth. Seriously.
Is that a serious question?
Yeah, no.
I could answer that one, actually.
Could you answer that one? No, do the bishops have whiplash? No. How much of your statement and the follow-up response to the General Conference's request has been informed by the conversations you've had with leaders over the last, 6 weeks or so? You've produced a statement and a response that is extraordinarily beyond the polarization that we've seen typically in the political process. And so I'm wondering how much of that foundation work has played into the events that have led up to today.
I think without those prior conversations, we would not be here. So they have been significant, not so much in all the content of what the bishops put forward. But they've been very significant in helping to set the spiritual tone. I think I shared with you yesterday that one of the experiences I had in being a part of some of those conversations is a profound experience of holy or Christian conferencing. Persons with very, very different opinions, strongly held values and convictions, strong enough that people were saying the only way forward is for somebody to leave, or that strongly. Still came to a place where they were affirming one another as children of the same God, no longer questioning one another's faith, no longer denying that God is present in people's lives. That is significant, and it set a tone, I think, that allowed us to build on. So it's not the content as much as the tone was helpful.
I see there's still a lot of questions, but we're near the end. I'm going to take one last question over here, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you so much for your work. There's one group that cannot be at the table with full integrity under the current rules. How would you handle the openly gay or lesbian clergy and get their input?
This commission that we would form will be sure that all voices are present.
All right, thank you so much. I know there's still some questions, but we want to honor the lunchtime, and I appreciate you coming. I hope that you found this time helpful, and I want to thank Bishop Ough for taking time to come back again
Thank
and
you all.
speak to us. Thank you.